Hey everyone, Rhonda Grisak here. I'm at Texakona Coffee Roasters here with the owner Elaine, and she's going to show us around and let us know what they do here. I don't know if everybody knows that they roast coffee here, and it's who we get our coffee from, and it's simply amazing. You can come in the store and pick it up, or a lot of times I go online and I just ordered it, and within a day I have it at my doorstep. So why don't you tell us more, Elaine, and give us a little tour of your shop. And just to let you know, they're opening one more store?
2 more locations. We have 2. We're opening 2 more.
Yeah, so they're going to be, why don't you tell us about the locations?
Well, that's very exciting. As you know, East Side McKinney downtown is trying to move some more space across the street there. A new Tups will be there. A local yokel restaurant is already there. And the flour mill's been there quite some time. In fact, it's been there 107 years, and we're going to be in the flour mill. So because it's the flour mill, we're opening Texakona FM, and we decided that sounded like vinyl rock music, so it's going to have a vinyl rock music theme where you can get drinks such as Livin' La Vida Mocha or Rock You Like a Hurricane.
I love that.
So there's lots of good drinks down there that are opening up this fall. We're very excited about that. It's a historical building, so we're doing the fastest we can to get that open. But in the meantime, we have the Coffee Museum. I have stuff from all over the world. As you know, I grew up on a coffee plantation in Nairobi, Kenya, and then I went to the Middle East after that, so I have coffee in my blood from way back. And so we've opened the Coffee Museum mostly to store all my junk. But let me also tell you, there's some great displays because we want to relate, educate, and caffeinate you. And so this is, if that's our plan, then this is what we're doing. We're relating to all of the customers that want to know, where could I go? Where could I ask questions about? Where could I explore more about coffee? And where could I get a great cup or a great bag to take home? And as you mentioned, online, we also now have subscription boxes that you can do, but the online delivery, we usually fulfill orders within 2 hours of receiving them, and they were roasted only 3 days ago. And the reason I say 3 days is because coffee has to kind of sit for 3 days to degas or kind of get ready and fully produce those flavors and aromas that you're going to want. So the oldest you're going to get from us is 3 days.
I just had my first cup in shop. They just gave it to me. Oh my gosh, it's so good. It's just so
amazing.
fresh.
One of the things that we really like is it's very fresh, and the way you can tell that is as it's being brewed, there's a bloom on it. It kind of bubbles up, has a little bit of a foam, and we want that. That's what's releasing all the aromas and everything. So not only will you get a good fresh cup because it was roasted on site like that, but we're also very proud that all of our coffees have a very low acidity, and that means they're very smooth, and so you can have 2 or 3 cups without it really affecting your stomach any, and we like that. So,
yeah, in fact, I had a long conversation with your husband one day about that.
My roaster.
Yeah, exactly. Because I have an issue with that. And it's like, I really need a coffee that is low in acid. I've never had an issue with your coffee.
Right,
So.
and it's not that it's wrong or right. It's just what we strive for here. Coffee along a spectrum is a lot like wine, if you're more familiar with that, where there's the dry wines and the fruity wines, and you just like what you like. I don't like dry wine. You know, in fact, I like dessert wines a whole lot better than any other. That doesn't make me low class. It doesn't make me anything else. And if you like box wine, that's fine. Same thing with coffee. There's a spectrum of coffee, but it all starts out the same way. So if we've already related, let's now educate. But consistency in coffee is what the SCA is about. They want you to get what you can out of each bean, and so that's the art of it. They pretty much stayed on the science side of things. So they don't look at each individual ring and bring out what that bean of that season of that origin is going to bring, because they're looking for consistency. It can change season by season. Last year's Brazil doesn't taste like this year's Brazil.
And remind me, what does SCA stand for again?
SCA is the Specialty Coffee Association. And so that's the education of it. We're educating people. Starbucks has its place, but if you're looking for something different or something interesting in your coffee, You're going to start finding out what origin you like. You're going to find what notes you like, if you like it lavender or grassy or cigar-like or nutty or honey or molasses or fruity. There's everything. It's just like wine. Some people like Pinot Noir, some people like Burgundy, some people like Malbec. You just find what you like and then go get that. And if you like the taste of the roast itself, instead of the origin, you are going to go to Starbucks. You're tasting the roast and how they roasted it. They roasted that bean is what you're going to taste. The smokiness, and they tend to be on the darker side. The Veranda blend is a little bit lighter, but it's still consistent. So wherever they got their bean from needs to taste the same. So the only thing you can regulate in that, you can't grow it the same every year. So you have to roast it the same. So on educating, here's what coffee is interesting about. So you plant a tree and it takes 3 years before it produces anything. And it will only do 1 to 5 pounds per plant, and it's an 8-foot plant. Some people call it a tree. It's really, it's also an overgrown bush in some ways, but it's an 8-foot tree, and it will produce long willowy branches, and on those willowy branches are kind of clumps of these coffee fruit. And these fruits, they sort of look like grapes, but they don't all mature at the same time. So you'll look at them, and as grapes get the right color that you want before you pick them, you can pick the bunch. On coffee, you have to pick each individual one because they turn red when they're ripe. You come back 3 days, get the red ones, come back 3 days, get the red ones. So it's a very manual process. Also, the acidity of the soil is so, the requirements of that plant, a lot of water and acidity in the soil, means it really grows the best on the side of a volcano. So we have a volcano in our coffee museum kind of showing you why that is and all of that. And so that's why you only see a very narrow band around the middle of the planet, that you can actually grow coffee only between Tropic of Capricorn and Tropic of Cancer. So it's because it's only grown in a few places, and yet over 60% of adults drink 1 or 2 cups a day, it's in high demand.
It really is. Well, now where do you actually grow your coffee beans?
Well, let me tell you our name, Texakona.
Right.
It was chosen purposely because we had a partner at the time that ran a coffee farm on Kona, Hawaii. Now, Hawaii is the only American state, the only American grown coffee, and so we do have coffee coming out of Puerto Rico, which is a colony of America, if you didn't know. And other than that, they've just started experimenting with some Californian grown, but it just doesn't have the acidity that it needs to have for the growing. They're growing it indoors more than anything. So American grown coffee, we thought that sounds cool. Plus Texas has that, Lone Star feel, and then the Hawaiian flag look very similar. We just kind of married them up and decided we're Tex-Hawaiian, where hula meets howdy.
No, I love it. In fact, I love your, what blend is it? It's a Texas blend that is my favorite.
Yes,
so.
we have the Lone Star blend. It's a real favorite. It's a tri-blend. It's the only one that has 3 coffees for us, and so it's a very complex coffee. It's definitely a favorite.
Tell them about the coffee blend that you have that your husband had told me about. That it's pretty expensive, but well worth it for your weekend treat. Maybe I finally tried that one. It's the smoothest coffee I have ever had.
Yeah, and that's what Kona's known for more than any other Hawaiian coffees. Is it's like if you grow your onions right next to your tomatoes in your garden, you're going to get a little onion feel to those tomatoes, which you may want. But anything grown right next to coffee gets absorbed. So on Kona, they grow a lot of chocolate, and they grow a lot of pineapple and a lot of other fruits, and so you're getting a nice citrus side, but it's going to be lemon and avocados and pineapple. It's the sweet fruits that grow there, as well as the the chocolate that grows right next to it. So that's what's coming out in your Kona. It's very smooth. It has a very honey-like taste and feel, and it's one of the most sought-after coffees in the world, and there's not much of it because it's a tiny island. Mm-hmm. The other one being Blue Mountain, which is out of Jamaica.
Just so you guys know, this location actually is right next to the old McKinney golf course. It's been here a long time on Greenville Avenue, and it's easy to find.
Yeah, it's Highway 5, and they now call it Oak Hollow. It's the city golf course. Yeah. It's really fun to come here because this is where we roast, and we do roasting tours at 11 on Saturdays. It's really fun to watch it roast and then take home that bag that is, an hour old when you get it. Yeah. So it's kind of fun to kind of explore that whole thing. We'll do a small tour. It only takes about 15 minutes, and those are very, very, very popular because it's kind of fun to see how this happens.
And this is a fun shop. There's a lot of stuff here going on.
We're
It's
family
a family
owned
business.
and-
Her husband is here. Her son is over there. So, yeah, it's really a neat shop.
And we just passed our 6th anniversary, so our 7th year, and we're really grateful to still be here. I know a lot of us treaded water during COVID and still are in some ways. So, but it's funny that coffee was deemed necessary.
Yeah.
So this is my husband David, and he is my roaster as well. I married him for his steaks, but I'm staying with him because of his coffee abilities. So.
Okay, this is our green bean storage room. This is where we keep the raw coffee. It's called green bean. Now what's interesting is the fact that we've had some people ask us, do you actually take green beans and actually turn them into coffee? Well, no. This stuff is called green bean because it has kind of a grayish green color whenever we get it in. We keep it in a climate controlled environment. We have a little air conditioning unit that is in here. We keep it at about 72 degrees and about 70% humidity. And that way these raw coffee materials that we have in here can last anywhere from a year to 18 months before they lose any of their potency or their notes or anything like that. We're running a little bit short on our inventory right now, but we have Kenya, Costa Rican decaf, Mexican decaf. We have Honduran, India, Monsoon Malabar. And I'm missing something. Kenya, Colombia. But we have all those different varietals that we do. Now we are a post-roast blender. What that basically means is that we roast all of our origins first. The origin is the country or the area that it comes from. So we roast all the origins first. And the reason why that is because some of the beans we have are large and some of them are small. So you don't want to blend them first and then roast them because you won't get an even enough roast. So today we're going to be roasting Monsoon Malabar. Now the Monsoon Malabar has its own little kind of interesting history. Apparently, legend has it that the Indian folks grow a lot of coffee. There's a plethora of coffee, and they had gone through and they had gotten an order in, and they were fixing to ship the order out, and they got it onto the boats, and they're going to ship it over to Spain. And the monsoon rains hit, and these are wooden boats, and they're in burlap bags. So the last thing you want to do is reintroduce moisture into the coffee because it can actually cause it to mold and rot and things like this. That's the last thing you wanted to do. So the boats turned around, they came back in, and so they stripped all of the coffee out of the burlap bags, and they put it back out to dry out again. And in the process, it changed some of the chemical components and things like this of the beans, and it also changed the look of the bean. And so they had apparently received payment, and they did not have enough coffee to refulfill the order. So they waited for all of this to be done. So they contacted Spain and said, "Hey guys, I'm sorry, but the monsoon rains have hit, and we're going to take a while before we can get the coffee to you. So please be patient." Yeah, they were not really telling the whole truth, but anyway, they got it done. So they got the coffee dried out, bagged it back up, threw it in the boat, got it back over there, and they contacted them back and just said, "Wow, this is the best coffee that you guys have ever sent us." So now you can actually purchase Indian coffee that has been monsooned. So that's what we're going to roast today. And you'll be able to take a look at it over here in the hopper. Now, these two machines right here is how we blend it. And so this one here is for things that have flavors and things like this in it. And this one is just the straight coffee because, like I said before, coffee's a sponge. That's the reason why whenever you go into the grocery store, you'll see a grinder that says for flavors and one that says for non-flavored. That's the reason. Okay? Now then, this is a Loring Smart Roast Kestrel S35 35 kilo fluid air roaster. Whew. Basically what that means is this uses hot air to roast the coffee, kind of like what I do. It uses hot air to do its job. I'm using hot air right now. So the This actually has a burner that heats the air up, and it has paddles on the inside of it. You can see these flashes of light that come by. There's paddles on the inside of it, similar to what you would have inside an ice cream freezer. And so it keeps the beans stirred up inside the hot air. Most coffee is roasted on a drum roaster, which basically is a conductive type of roaster. It does heat the air up on the inside, but the majority of the heat is delivered through the hot steel as that drum rolls around. This drum does not turn, it stays stationary, so it just keeps things going around. One of the reasons why we chose this particular machine is because of the emissions that are given off by coffee. Roasting coffee smells nothing like roasted coffee. Roasting coffee is pretty obnoxious. It smells like hot vinegar. So the last thing you want to do is you want to have that going out into the atmosphere. So this particular machine actually utilizes the same heat source as it does to heat the beans up, as it does to burn off all those noxious fumes. So when I'm roasting in here, you cannot smell that I'm roasting outside. Whereas with a drum roaster, you have to have an afterburner that attaches to the tailpipe or the exhaust port of it to burn off those noxious fumes. So you're using a non-productive heat source. You're not getting anything out of the heat that you're using in order to be able to roast the coffee. So what we're going to do is we're going to turn the burner on. This is a fairly small roast that we're going to be doing. This is an 8-kilo roast. It's almost the minimum that the machine will do. I mentioned that this is a 35-kilo roaster. Well, we don't want to go to full 35 kilos because as you roast, the beans will expand. So if you get too much in there, then you're not going to be able to keep good even heat around there. So we usually limit it to about 30 kilos, which is 66 pounds. So what we're going to do is we're going to warm the machine up, kind of like you would with your oven at the house. You're not going to take cookies, put them into the oven, and then turn it on to 350, unless you want rubber cookies. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to bring this up. We're going to get it to a charge temperature or a preheat temperature of about 290 degrees. We're going to bring the beans up into the hopper because we don't want to put the beans up in there too quickly. This is what the raw beans are going to look like. I have a very strong magnet on the bottom of that to pull off any ferrous material. So we're going to put the beans in. So right now you're going to see that they're going to be flying around, flailing around, everything like that. So what we're going to do is we're going to wait for the temperature and everything like this to subside. Usually on this small of a roast, we're going to wait about 30 seconds. Then we're going to crank the heat up. So I'm going to turn the heat up a little bit. This is a small enough roast. We're going to do a moderate amount of heat. So what we're going to start doing is we're going to start drying the beans out. Right now we're in what they call the drying phase. We're in this. We just dropped it in, and we're going to start pushing heat to it. Now, granted, this bean already starts off beige, so it's going to be kind of hard to monitor where color change hits. So what we're going to do is we're going to start applying heat to it, and when we get to the point where they call it color change, a lot of this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to be looking at the color of the beans, but I'm also going to be pulling out samples through the dryer, and I'm going to be smelling it. Right now, the coffee smells like mowed grass or mowed hay, and as it eventually, when that smell goes away, then we're at color change. So we're going to be kind of going now. The other ones you can kind of see it kind of gets kind of an alien green, and then we move into the beige. Then usually what we're going to do is, depending on the size of the roast, this one should be able to lower the temperature down. The smaller roast, we're going to lower the temperature down, we're going to lower the air supply down, because it's kind of like making a good stew. You bring it up to a rolling boil, and then you allow it to simmer. So what I'm going to do is, once you get into this stage, past the color change, we've gone from the drying stage to the development stage, or the Maillard reaction. Maillard is a fancy handle for just the browning phase. And then we're going to monitor the color, the temperature, and everything like this. And usually we roast to the third line right through here. Because that's where, if you roast it too light, it gets sour. If you roast it too dark, it gets bitter. And so that's the reason why we chose to do line 3 here. Usually it's right 9, 10, or 11 is usually what we go through. Any questions about any of that? And this is what it's all about. For you chemistry nerds out there, that's the chemical structure of caffeine. My personal favorite friend. So we're at about 3 minutes in, about 250 degrees. And you can kind of smell this. It's going to smell like, be careful, it's hot. So as it's expanding, as the steam and everything is coming off of it, the outside skin will actually expand so far that it will pop or crack. So I'm one of the few industries that does not say no to cracks. So it will be, you've got 2 cracks that you have. You have the first crack, which is around 400 on this machine, between 400 and 420 degrees. And then you can actually go so far as to getting it dark enough, we'll go into second crack, which is around 455 to 465 of the bean temperature. Now, monitoring the bean temperature through this probe right here, I'm also watching the return air temperature, the air that is coming, the air that is going out, and sometimes the bean temperature, the beans will actually be hotter than the air inside the machine, because there's you have an exothermic reaction going on to begin with, because you've got all the heat going into the bean. And then when you start drying it out and the chemicals start to form and things like this, the sugar starts to develop, the beans will actually create their own heat, so you have an endothermic reaction. So we've gone from, let's see, we've got chemistry, we've gone geography, so we're kind of, and now we're going to go into the mathematics part of it. Now, this is telling me I need to shut up and go to work. If you can smell that, that's that real noxious vinegary smell. So we're just a little bit past first crack. So I'm looking at the color. The color is developing very nicely, but it's still a little bit light. You can see the smoke coming off of it, so we're actually past first crack. So what temperature are you right now? I'm at 440 degrees. There, did you hear that? Okay, I put the moisture in. The burner just went to full tilt. Outside air is coming in. Right in here. Oh, really? Okay.
I would say about 9
I was going to say 6 or 7, but you're saying 9 or 10. Okay.
I'd say 9.
Oh, really? Okay, that's all right.
The amount of beans that I have in that hopper does not equate to the amount of beans that I have in that hopper that I can sell. We'll lose anywhere from 12 to 17% of the weight of the beans. So we have to know what the loss is. So we have to know what we started with. This was 8 kilos, and what we end with. So we'll measure that, and that will tell us what the yield was, and then we can keep track of what the percent of the loss is. And my cohort over here, Rob, we've developed spreadsheets for every one of the individual origins that we have, so we know what the percent loss is, so that if we need to forecast how much bean we can sell from what we get in, or how much bean we need to roast for the week, because we don't want to roast too much. We don't want to have too much, we don't want to have too much or too little on the shelf. So we will, we figure that out. We know what the loss is, and we know what some of the blends are. So if we have a blend that is, let's say a 35-65 blend, we know that, if we want to make a specific blend, and we want to just do, 100 pounds of that blend, we know that we need to roast X number of pounds of green of that, and X number of pounds of green of this, in order to So we got 6.7 kilos.
Excuse me.
We got 6.65. Let's do that. So that gave us a 16.8% loss. Now, one of the things that comes off of the beans too, as you're roasting, not all of you get a lot of the parchment, which is the little fine stuff that's on the outside of the seeds. It looks like a white version of the what you find on Spanish peanuts. You get as much of that off as you can, but there's still some other part of the parchment that is still on there. They call it silver skin, and as it burns off, it's turned into chaff. And this, what looks like a short-cut 55-gallon drum over here, that's where the chaff ends up. And if you remember your Bible story, I grew up on a farm, or my dad grew up on a farm, and I had grandparents that were farmers and everything, and I kind of understood what chaff was, but I really didn't understand a whole lot about it until I got into this business. I mean, this stuff is extremely light and fly away. And we have people that come by and buy our chaff to mix in with their, it works really well for like peat moss or something like this in your garden, or they actually buy it and put it in their compost bins. So, what used to be just the seed that we use for coffee, everything with the fruit is being utilized now for something. The parchment is used, ground up, and it's actually used in ladies' cosmetics because it's very high in antioxidants. Of course, we use the seeds for this lovely elixir of the gods. The mucilage, or the fruit, they make energy drinks with it now. And the skin, they dry it out, and it's called cascara, and you can actually make a very, very tasty tea out of it. And so we're using virtually everything from the coffee fruit when we just used to only use the seed itself. The problem with the Agtron chart is the fact that it is a series of dots that you grind the coffee at, and you put the coffee into a petri dish, and then you try to compare that with these particular colors here from the petri dish. And it's kind of hard to do. So we have opted for the electronic version. So what we're going to do is we're going to grind this as fine as we can. We'll clear all this out, be sure there's not any And the other thing is that this particular device does not require as much coffee as the Agtron dots do.
These are rocks. Oh, they came in with the coffee?
Yes.
Now, when this machine...
All right, this particular coffee was a 15, which I had mentioned earlier that we try to be within the 13 to 15 range. So 15 is right here. So it's kind of a medium light. and it's about a 63 on the Agtron chart. So we are right in the area where we like to be as far as our roast goes. So it's we're just, that we want to be consistent with our roast. We want to try to keep the color like it is. Now some beans, depending on the temperature inside the building, the humidity outside, the humidity in here, the temperature of the bean, the amount of moisture that's in the bean, how fresh the bean was, all those things work into what goes on inside the roaster. Now sometimes if the bean is very damp, it takes a while to push things through. So in order to be able to roast it properly, in order to get the color that we're looking for, we may have to push it a little bit hotter. Some of the coffees that we do, we don't have to push it as hot. The decaf coffees that we do develop a whole lot lower temperature than what this Monsoon did. The Monsoon is probably one of the coffees that we actually allow it to go a little bit warmer as far as our discharge temperature, just because it does not develop, and the first crack on this one doesn't develop until say 425, where a lot of the others are developing around 410, 415. So we're trying to get a specific time, and we're trying to get around a minute and a half to 2 minutes past first crack to get the coloration that we want. This is it. This is what we do. We kind of like it, obviously.